Welcome to Vitality Doc. This video focuses on correcting lower cross syndrome. You may or may not have heard of lower cross syndrome, but I run across it every day in my practice. It's typically created by people who sit too long in their job or in their life and develop a problem with their posture. This can lead to problems with low back pain, pain down the legs, pain in the upper back or the neck. And what we're looking at is typically a problem where one muscle on one side becomes tight, therefore the opposite muscle becomes weak. So in this case with lower cross syndrome, my hip flexors become very tight because I'm sitting for too long, therefore my glute muscles, which are the opposite of them, are going to become weak. And then it's going to cross up the body. So now my abs are going to become weak, and therefore my low back muscles are going to become extremely tight. So we want to address how we can correct this by strengthening the muscles that are weak and stretching the muscles that are strong. I'm Dr. Kirsten Ferguson with Vitality Doc, and let's get started. So first let's focus on the glute muscles. So the glutes are weak in this case, and we need to reactivate them in order to get them to fire and shut off the muscles in the hamstrings and the lower back. So come onto your back, and let's start out with a glute bridge. So a glute bridge is not quite the same as a typical bridge. And many times I see people do a bridge, they come all the way up and arch the back, and that leads to problems in the back, and we're trying to correct that problem. So what I want to do is I want you to tuck the hips under, pressing your low back into the mat, and then just simply using your glutes to lift yourself up off of the floor. And if you want to double check and see if you're holding the glutes, you just pick up one leg and then pick up the other leg. And if the hip drops when you pick up a leg, then the glute on the side of the standing leg is weak. You need to work on that some more. Always work both sides. So you want to work up to holding this for about 3 minutes. Now we're going to go to the hip flexors. So the glutes are now activated. We want to stretch the hip flexors. So I'm going to grab a block, and I'm going to come onto the block, making sure that I place it partway onto my sacrum or my butt bone and partway on the lower back. So it's not pressing on one particular vertebra. And then extend both legs long on the mat. You can also work up to holding this one for 3 minutes. This is going to stretch these hip flexors right here. Okay, so now we've strengthened the glutes, we've stretched the hip flexors. Now there's another muscle in here that gets involved, and it hides because it comes from the inside of the lower back, straight through the body, out the front of the hips, and wraps around. It's called the psoas. And it is a bugger because it will not let your back, it will keep your back hostage, is what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to bring up this knee. I'm going to place my hand on this knee, and I'm going to push on my knee and have my knee push on my hand. And hold that for a count of 5. And then I'm going to switch legs. And switch. And switch. And maybe do that 5 times on each leg. Okay, so now I've worked the glutes, I've worked the hip flexors, I've worked the psoas. I need to strengthen the abs, and I need to stretch the lower back. So I'm going to remove the block. I'm going to work a little bit on strengthening the abs. Now, the problem with strengthening the abs is if I start doing a bunch of crunches, I'm just going to work my hip flexors again and make them tight. So I want you to extend your legs really long on the mat and extend your arms straight up overhead. We're going to do what's called a hollow. So start your hollow by lifting your shoulders and your head up off the mat and pressing your low back into the mat. So I'm staying completely straight. I am not engaging my hip flexors at all. And then come back down. Now let's do the opposite. We're going to press the low back into the mat and lift the straight legs up off the mat, pushing the toes together, keeping the legs straight so that I'm not engaging the hip flexor. Lunge. And then lower. And then you can do the two of them together. So head and arms up, lower legs up, and hold. And down. So now we're worked on the abs. Now let's work on that lower back. So there's a number of ways we could do this, but honestly, the easiest way to do this is probably just to come up on your feet and come into, let's say a moderate leg fold. So not a wide leg, not close together, and just bending all the way down. Grabbing opposite elbows. Slight bend in your knees. And some long, deep inhale, exhales to stretch out that lower back. You can hold this pose for up to 3 to 5 minutes. And last but not least, a really great way to do this is, I call this the lazy way to stretch my hip flexors. I'm going to take a block or a pillow, and I'm going to lay on my belly, and I'm going to put this block underneath this thigh. Pillow probably works better than a block, but a block is what I have right now. And then just lay down, and you can bend that leg and just hang out here. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to let this hip drop straight into the mat. So the closer I bring the block up towards the hip, the more it's going to let it drop down until I get under the hip. And then the opposite. I'm just going to straighten my leg and bend my leg a few times. Just letting that stretch. And that's all there is to it. Now, obviously, there's a number of ways we can work on this. But if you think about the concept, you always want to strengthen the glutes and the abs. You want to stretch the hip flexors, and you want to stretch the lower back. As long as you follow those concepts, you're going to work out that lower cross syndrome. I always recommend that you do this anytime that you've been in a seated position for an extended period of time, if you've done a long drive, or if you're starting to get symptoms related to that. And remember, always get to your chiropractor. Have a great day. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and like this video if you would like to see some more on lower cross syndrome.